Now, joining me to discuss this is TVC Sports Correspondent, Janfrances Nweze. Jane, good evening. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Sansing. I think this is the second time I'm talking to you on the show. So, yes, it's good to be on the show with you again.
Definitely. Okay, let's dive right into it. So much to talk about, women's football right here. But let's look at the decision to have a FIFA Club Women's Cup. The right step in the right direction in terms of growing the women's game further?
Well, definitely more competitions is what grows the game. And, it's quite interesting, and it's always very encouraging to see how deliberate FIFA is in making these plans for global women football development. Also always hammering on the fact that, there's still a lot of work to do. Not many of the clubs, of the women's clubs, actually have a professional league, or rather to play in, which means that they get enough money and proper scheduling and all that. So, but we can't wait for everyone to be on the, on the level of the WSL or the American League before FIFA gets to start. So I think that with this is going to push more people to actually see that, there's something there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And you also know that immediately the discussion about a possible Women's Club World Cup started. You had Confederation of African Football starting, the CAF Women's Champions League. And so that's all what we're talking about. So, yes, it helps in the development of the women's game.
Okay, let's take into consideration now that critics have said over time that FIFA is more concerned about money and, revenue generation in terms of compounding an already congested calendar for these players, not taking into cognizance the health of the players in terms of the wear and tear on the body and, injuries and what have you. How does the introduction of a FIFA Club Women's Cup affect, the women's health? Let's take the welfare of the players now into consideration. More games will definitely mean more vulnerability to injuries.
Well, the men also play Club World Cup, and I think one thing we should be giving FIFA a kudos for is the current development of a 4-year cycle, the next cycle for the International Women calendar. I think that is fantastic. I am still one of the persons very pained that up till now, this is May, and we don't know if the Women's African Cup of Nations is going to hold, because of course there's an Olympics and CAF is not saying anything about when it should hold and all that, what other available FIFA window is there. So this window is for 2026 to 2029, and they have mapped out everything, how it's going to work out. There are competition windows, some in the beginning of the year, some in the middle of the year. They've factored in years where you have like an Olympics tournament, and they have also created, for confederations like sites. So FIFA factored all that in, and they've given a 10-day window. So the last official international game would actually happen on a Saturday. That means the player have 1 week of recovery, but traveling and coming back to rest before you train and join in the next weekend, fixture. So all that they have factored in, and I think if federations and clubs and FAs and leagues follow this very well and also start making their plans, we won't have, that situation where we overload players going forward.
Okay, we'll see how that pans out. Considering the men's game, the players are also complaining about congested, fixtures and calendars, as it were. But you touched on something important, and that has to do with the African continent, the African Women's, Nations Cup, and the uncertainty around it as a result of the congested calendar. I would like to get your thoughts quickly. How do we address this going forward? I know quite well CAF is trying to find a suitable time for that tournament to hold. But going forward, what reforms do you expect to be put in place to ensure that the women's game is given the priority it deserves, and more importantly, that we have, the growth of the women's game more than we've seen over the last 5-6 years?
Okay, so I think that FIFA have done the biggest work for, most confederations, because they have held consultations with other stakeholders like club sides, confederations and also federations to arrive at these calendars, which means that clubs were factored in, and you're looking at where you're going to make a compromise. So in the window, they said you don't have to follow it. In the new schedule, rather, they're saying you don't have to, follow it strictly, but it's best advised you do. So there are places that they would say you can fix. If you're fixing a competition where you don't have a window, it means, of course, that the clubs may not release the players. And then they're also saying to the leagues that if you're fixing a league match in a period where there is an international window, it would mean you won't have your best players because you're duty bound to release those players. So with what they've done, I think confederations like CAF should start now to also look at, because trust me, Sam, saying, if we're being sincere to ourselves, I think there's no realistic day in this 2024 or period, rather in this 2024, that we can have the Women AFCON, except we don't want, to have the best players in this tournament. Maybe we want to have something for the domestic players, but if we want all the best players, there's no window. And it's now a 12-team tournament, previously 8-team tournament. So it's not something you can say, let's bring them and wrap it up within a week or two. So it would take a longer time because, we're going to have, a quarterfinal and all that. So right now, it's best for us to look at the next option. Are we moving to 2025? Can we find a window in 2025? Or should we start with the new cycle that FIFA is releasing? One thing that people deserve right now is CAF to come straight to tell us what the situation is, and then say, going forward, we are also going to follow suit, draw a plan, so we don't find ourselves in this kind of situation going forward.
Okay, we'll just, look at how things pan out and hope that, all of these decisions and reforms enables the women's game to grow further than we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years. Thank you so much for your time on the show this evening, Janfrances Nweze.